help if I unmuted myself. Welcome everybody to our live stream today. Today we're doing something a little bit different. First of all, I'm not wearing a hat for a change. So that's something different for me. But we're going to do something we've wanted to do for quite a while now. So the Chocolatey community is something that's very dear to my heart, and it's very dear to the hearts of both Gary and Kim, who are going to be joining us shortly. So before I ask them to join us and introduce themselves, I want to tell you who I am, first of all. My name is Paul Broadwith, and I'm the Technical Engineering Manager here at Chocolatey Software. Gary, could you introduce yourself for us?
Sure, yeah. My name is Gary Ewan Park. I am a senior software engineer here at Chocolatey. And yeah, as Paul said, I mean, I've been involved in the Chocolatey community for a long while now, before I started working at Chocolatey full time. So yeah, I'm heavily involved in it, and I think it's a great community. I'm happy to be part of it.
Thanks, Gary. Kim, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kim Normo. I'm a package engineer here at Chocolatey Software. I've been part of the community for quite a few years before I joined Chocolatey last year, and it's also quite dear to my heart as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim. And Gary, myself, and Kim all came for the community. So prior to starting at Chocolatey, we all maintained packages or were involved in some part of the community to do with Chocolatey. And it's a little known fact, but the majority of the engineering team at Chocolatey Software were also community contributors before becoming members of the team. Now I'm going to name everybody that's there. We'll meet them on future streams, but yeah, we all came from the majority of us came from the community. And as Kim said, it's dear to our hearts, and it's something we want to try and nurture and nourish. And we've wanted to do a stream like this for a little while now, talking about how important the community is, how people can get involved, what parts of the community does Chocolatey have, what can people do, what can they get involved in. And I've put together a few slides today that I'm fingers crossed going to be able to share without any issues. And we're just going to go over those various aspects. And it's just a conversation we're having today. There's no kind of set agenda beyond the slides and the kind of points. We want to kind of bring out the high level points. There's no real set agenda, and we're just going to have a discussion. So please, if you can drop any questions you might have into the chat, that's either on Twitch or on YouTube. We can pick those questions up. There will be Chocolatey team members already in there, and they may be answering questions and bringing them to our attention. Also, if you like the videos, please subscribe to us, like us, YouTube, Twitch, follow us, do all the good stuff. That helps us get the videos out there and gets more people involved in the Chocolatey community, which enriches that community and makes us all better for it. So I'm going to attempt to share some slides. I say that because I've got quite a high resolution monitor. I'm hoping Zoom does its thing and everything works fantastically well, but let's give that a go and see. Does that look okay, guys? Gary, Kim, is that looking good from your side?
Looking good on my side.
Awesome.
Mine too, yes. Although I've got a reasonably high resolution monitor too. That's why, but we'll wait and see.
Okay, so rather than me staring at the side, I'm going to move it here so I can see it. So the agenda we've just got 4 high-level topics, and I've got a couple of slides for the first one and a slide for each of the other one, just high-level bullet points. So we're going to look at the Chocolatey community, Chocolatey packages repository, and Kim has heavily been involved in that for quite some time. And we've got other members of the Chocolatey team as well that help out with that, but we're going to talk a little bit more about it, and Gary's been involved with that as well earlier on too. The chocolatey.cake.recipe, that's something that's quite new and a lot of people won't know much about. And Gary will be able to talk very much more about that, as it's kind of his baby. He's created that, put that together, and with help from the rest of the team, of course, but Gary was kind of the driver for that. Recently as well, we had a community day, and I want to talk a little bit about it, how it went, and what we kind of plan for the future, and what it really is, because community day, you know, as I said, it's an internal thing to Chocolatey, and you probably won't know much about it. And finally, what are the goals for the future for the community? We're going to talk about some of the things we'd like to do, some of the things we need your help with, and again, ways that you can help us help you and make the community grow and keep nurturing it as well. So the first one there is, as I mentioned, is the Chocolatey Community I've actually got that wrong. Community Chocolatey Packs. It is the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages Repository. I had to miss out the first chocolatey, or all those words don't fit on that line. So it's actually the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages Repository, and something that I actually didn't know because I asked it just before the stream, and when I was looking at these slides, I went, there's a bit missing. When was that repository actually put together? So we had a look at it. It's actually been around for 9 years now. The first commit was on the 1st of March 2013. Gary, Kim, please nod if I'm correct in that. Awesome, thank you. So what is it? And it's, it's maintained by the community, not Chocolatey Software. And we're really going to talk a little bit about it. So the reason it's here, the reason why we've put it together, why it was put together in the first place, was a kind of place for Chocolatey packages that were going to be uploaded to the Chocolatey Community Repository. It's kind of morphed a little bit from what it was originally to what it is now. But the kind of primary reason why it's there now, why don't all these maintainers just maintain their own packages like many other people do? Why have we got a kind of Chocolatey Community Packages repository? And that's really because we've got many eyes on a package. There's lots of people that make sure those packages are kept up to date. They can see that if there's any issues with that, they can review the code that goes in there, any changes, etc. That's all going to be maintained by the many maintainers that work on that repository. And before I turn over to Kim and Gary, the next bit as well is it's quite important that this is maintained by the community. So the people who are working on that repository are volunteer maintainers, community maintainers, community members that are working on that repository for the good of everybody. As I said, many eyes on the package, reviewing code, etc., etc., etc. Chocolatey Software doesn't maintain any packages at all. Chocolatey Software doesn't maintain this packages repository either. As I said, it's important to differentiate that. Now, the Chocolatey team members are involved in this, but they're involved as community maintainers. They're not involved as Chocolatey team. I'm probably playing with semantics a little bit, but I think it's important to differentiate that. And some of the Chocolatey team, myself, for example, Kim, we've got James and Josh, and some of the other members of the team as well, actually all maintain their own packages. I think I've got about 120 packages I maintain in my own repository. I don't know about Kim, how many Kim's got, but we've got lots of team members who maintain their own packages outside of the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages repository as well. So as I said, a little bit of semantics, but it's important to point that out, I think. Kim, you've done a lot of work on the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages repository, particularly about something we're going to talk about later on, which is kind of governance, processes, procedures, that kind of thing. Do you want to just give us a little bit of overview of what you've been doing recently, particularly around GitHub Actions and things like that?
Yeah, sure. Recently, I've been trying to get down some procedures that we can follow to make both contribution by other community members as well as for our own part as well, to maintaining the repository to make it easier. Currently, we're in the process of updating some of the GitHub actions to close issues that no one is working on at the moment. Plans are to also add linting to it, and then get the proper structure of the procedure that we need to follow when both contributing packages as well as reviewing packages that comes into the repository.
Awesome. And a lot of the work that you've been doing, Kim, a lot of us are really, what's the best word to use? I'm quite amazed at the amount of work that's going into doing a lot of this governance and maintaining that. We have these set procedures, but it's not to dissuade people we've had conversations about this. It's not to sort of, if you're coming into this fresh and you're not really sure what the Chocolatey Community, Chocolatey Packages repository is about, and you have a look at it and go, oh, there's a lot of governance around about that. That governance is really to make it easier for you. It's not to make it harder, because it means you can't really get yourself into too much trouble, because there's a lot of checks and balances there before you would fall over and maybe do something that you would regret. For example, pushing a package or updating some code there that maybe you know has been caught by package verifier or package scanner or something else. So that's there to help and not hinder. And I think it's really important to point that out. That's the reason for it. Gary, we were talking before the stream that you'd pushed a lot of your packages to the Chocolatey Community, Chocolatey Packages repository when it was called the Chocolatey Core Team Packages repository. So you don't maintain, I don't think you maintain any packages anymore. You moved all your packages over there.
I did. So just a small point of clarity before I pick up on that. So there's some comments in the Twitch chat. So there's a bit of an overload in terms of the word repository. So what we're talking about here is the Chocolatey Community, Chocolatey Packages GitHub repository. It's the repository where the packages are maintained. And that, as a GitHub repository, has been around from since March 2013. We also have the thing that is called the Chocolatey Community repository, CCR, which is where Chocolatey by default will install a package or upgrade a package from. So the overloaded use of the word repository, I think, is causing a little bit of a disconnect. So I just wanted to clarify that point. So like I said, what we're talking about here is the Chocolatey Community, Chocolatey Package repository on GitHub, which did used to be called the Core Team Packages repository, but we have changed the name. So having said that, so yeah, my involvement in it, I used to be a package maintainer. That's kind of where my life as a Chocolatey community member started. But it quite quickly became evident that I wasn't very good at it. Let's be honest, right? I know enough PowerShell to be dangerous. I know enough about MSIs and EXEs and how they work to be dangerous, and putting those two things together and trying to maintain and keep up to date with packages, I wasn't very good at it. So one of the things that I did as a package maintainer is I took my repository, my repository that I had in GitHub where I was maintaining those packages, and I moved them into what was then the Core Team Packages repository. And the idea in my head was that it becomes a central place that we could, multiple maintainers can maintain those packages together and get the benefit of best practices, etc., in one place, and then continue to maintain the packages there. Now, I can say I'm still involved in some of those packages. I help out when and where I can, but my involvement in the packages repository on GitHub is more from a helping out with issues, triaging issues, as opposed to actual day-to-day maintenance of the packages. So yeah, that's where my involvement comes into play.
I think it's a good point that I didn't pick up on was being familiar with it, but using it all the time. I mean, I'm on there every day. There's sometimes there's questions and things. I'm on checking things. I just take it for granted that when I talk about the Chocolatey Community, Chocolatey Packages repository, everybody knows what I'm talking about. But in actual fact, Gary's is absolutely right. And thanks for whoever it was in the chat that mentioned it and correcting us. It's a GitHub repository. And I'm actually going to change this slide in a second when someone else speaks in the background. So that it does actually say GitHub repository. So it's, and I'm actually going to as well, there we go. There is the repository there. So we've got all of the packages are in automatic. I'm not going to go through all of this, but here's there's a huge number of packages in there that are maintained in this repository, and there's the automation in there as well. And
so the one thing just to pick up while you've got it open there, then Paul, if you go back to the root of that repository, there is, as you'll see there is an automatic folder and a manual folder. Now, what we'll say about the manual folder is the clues in the name. The packages that are maintained in that one are ones that are not automatically updated. All the ones that are in the automatic folder, and there's something like 250, etc. Each of those packages are checked automatically for a new package version every 6 hours. And if one is found, it is automatically bundled up into a Chocolatey package, is automatically submitted to the Chocolatey Community repository, and assuming that it goes through all of the package moderation services, so package validator, package verifier, package scanner, most of those packages are trusted packages, meaning that they are going to go out to production, ready for being installed straight away. So what we can say is that, let's imagine a new version of I'm going to pick a bad example, but let's just talk about it anyway. Let's talk about Google Chrome. If Google Chrome gets an updated application version, within 6 hours, there will be a new packaged version on Chocolatey ready for installation and upgrade. Now, the reason I say that it's a bad example is because there are reasons that the Google Chrome package for Chocolatey is a reasonably difficult one, because Google Chrome have a single URL, which is always downloads the latest package for application installer, I should say. So it causes problems sometimes because there's that little bit of time in between where the Chocolatey package is out of sync with the actual installer. But that's, by the by, the important thing to take away from that is that within 6 hours, you typically have a new package version available in Chocolatey ready for consumption. And that's automated across the 250 odd packages that are in this repository. Paul has his own repository doing the exact same thing. Kim has his own repository doing the exact same thing. So from a community standpoint, a large proportion of all the packages that are available on the Chocolatey Community repository are updated automatically within that 6 hour period, which in my head is just mind-blowing in terms of the sheer number of packages that we have available and the number of package versions that we have available within a very short space of time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's between the two repositories and perhaps Kim's as well, we're maybe talking 500-600 packages between all the repositories, maybe more. I'm not actually sure how many packages are in the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages repository. Should maybe have checked that beforehand. I know there's several hundred. Kim, do you know the number roughly?
Roughly, out of automatic packages, there are 283, I believe, last time I checked. Okay. Manual, I believe there are 20 or 30. So.
Okay, so we're talking about 300 packages thereabouts, yeah, in between automatic and manual. Yeah, so it's a huge amount of packages. It's a huge amount of effort that goes on as well. If you take a look at the repository and the involvement with, you know, the community maintainers, community members, and the issues and the pull requests that get created, and recently. Discussions have been added as well. So there's discussion, people asking questions about the packages and all of that work that goes into just keeping all of that running, keeping the machine moving is huge. And I think it's kudos to the community and kudos to Kim and the other Chocolatey team members that are working in there. But one of the things that we're kind of lacking a little bit, I think, and it's fair to say that, is involvement from the wider community. So it tends to be the same sort of people that are involved in the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages GitHub repository. So as I said, some Chocolatey team members in there, and we've got some of the community team or community members in there as well. But it's the same sort of people that are in there all the time. There's not a lot of new people coming in, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to do this stream and wanted to do it for a while, to bring to the attention of you who's watching that this is available and that we're looking for help in this. And when I say we, I'm talking about the Chocolatey community are looking for help in this. And the more eyes we get on a package, the safer it is in terms of the changes that are being made, and that they're not changes that are going to cause issues. Because some of these packages are fairly complicated. I mean, Kim, can you maybe name a few packages that seem to be causing problems with the sheer amount of code that's in there?
I don't remember offhand anyone that are problematic because of the code, but I do know some of the problematic packages. But one of them are the Python package, LibreOffice packages. There are some others as well, but those two are the main. Those that people ask the most about, at least, that are problems with.
There was a free CAD one as well recently. That was an interesting one in the sense that one of the things that the automation that we try to do is we need to have kind of a stable place where we can check for what is the latest package or application version that's available, so that we know that we can create a Chocolatey package for it. So the infrastructure around FreeCAD seems to be changing, so that what we thought was a stable place that we could get the latest version from isn't a stable place, and it's not reliable. So we've had some dialogue between ourselves and the FreeCAD community in terms of trying to establish where we can get that reliable information to know when we can push a new package version. So that was an interesting one to get involved in. It started in GitHub issues, it went to discussion, it went to Twitter because we had a Twitter conversation with one of the maintainers of FreeCAD. He came into the discussion. So everyone was getting involved and try to help out, but I don't think we've quite got to a resolution on that one yet.
No, not as far as I know.
I think we've recently had some issues with, I don't think it's recently. I think the LibreOffice packages, I think there's 3 of them. LibreOffice Still, there's another one. I can't remember all the names. I remember LibreOffice Still, that was one I was looking at recently. But the way that package is updated as well is a lot different from other packages where you would, for Google Chrome, Gary used that example earlier on, where you would go and download the Google Chrome installer and you would run through the installer and it installs the software and it's all done. But the LibreOffice packages, from what I remember, are actually downloaded from an update system that LibreOffice provide, as opposed to a kind of traditional download location. So I think there's some hoops to jump through there, and there's a particular member of the community that kind of maintains that package. And that's another good point to make as well, actually, in that while there are lots and lots of packages, we have started to, and I say we, I mean primarily Kim, to be fair, has started to put together what we've called a code owners file. Kim, do you want to talk a little bit more about that and how that works and how it helps?
Sure. The idea with the code owners file that we have added are similar to the concept of code owners on GitHub itself. But in our case, we won't have GitHub won't request reviews from those people automatically. So the idea is to, whenever a PR comes in, we check that file to see if it have someone associated with that package, and if we do, if there are someone, then we'll ask those people to review the changes before we take the higher overlook over the PR to actually merge it. That's the main idea behind it.
Again, that helps with those checks and balances we talked about earlier for new people coming in, who want to, perhaps they want to submit a PR for pull request for changes to that package. Maybe it's just update it or something like that. Again, you're getting somebody who is experienced in that package, maybe created that package or certainly has maintained it for a long time, is going to be asked to look over it, because while sometimes it looks straightforward, it's just a change, but there's maybe a bit of context, a bit of background that you can't really write down a lot of the time. It's just your experience with that package, and getting that code owner to be able to review that helps with making sure that that package continues to be usable on the Chocolatey Community repository where it ultimately ends up. So just to go over a couple of the points on the slides again, if we just jump back to this, because we're spending a long time on this. This is a really huge part of the Chocolatey community. So we wanted to make sure we gave it adequate coverage. But how do we make it more accessible? We've talked about those processes, procedures and automation. Kim has touched on that, as Gary has as well. And I've mentioned that, it's to help, it's not to hinder, and it's really important to emphasize that, because we're trying to encourage people to come into the Chocolatey Community, Chocolatey Packages GitHub repository and help out with maintaining some of those packages. And it's a daunting task when you see hundreds of packages in one folder and some in another, and you're not really sure where to start. Well, those procedures, processes, and automation are there to make sure that you're helped along the road there, and you're not going to do anything that's going to cause problems for that package. And how do you get involved? Where do you start? Well, I showed you the repository. Just to jump back there is the repository URL there. I appreciate it's not very big on the stream, but it's just github.com/chocolatey-community/chocolatey-packages. And in there, you can see the issues. There's the pull requests. The pull requests tend to be fairly up to date. Kim is really on top of us, and as is the rest of the community that's involved. Red Baron 2 there is a common name you'll see in this repository as well. So you can get involved by just jumping in there, asking, answering some issues. There's also discussions in there. I mentioned that, we'd recently enabled those. So there's discussions that you can pick up in, you can get involved in, you can find out more information about some of those packages as well. And you'll get more experience as you do that. Porting packages over to the repository, there's a common, what's the word I'm looking at? Common maintainers that are no longer maintaining their packages. I mean, it's been that way for a long time. So there's some people that have brought those packages out of I'll start again, out from under their maintainership is what I'm trying to say, and ported them over to the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey packages. And there is some documentation to help with that. If you go into the repository and look at the README, there's some documentation there to help you port those packages over. Yes, it's in the, you'll find it in there. I think it's under the contributing guidelines, or it'll be in the README somewhere. So there's documentation in there for that, so that you can get involved that way. Sorry,
just to clarify, it's actually under the wiki page.
Is it
migrating packages over?
Package migration process. There we go. I thought it was linked from the README. Okay, so there's the the migration process. If you wanted to take some packages from a maintainer that's not maintaining them and bring them into the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages GitHub repository, then that's the way that you can do that. And there's a step-by-step instructions to help you with that. Thanks for that, Kim. And finally, there are two other repositories that we've got. We've got the Chocolatey Chocolatey.extension. It's actually Chocolatey-core.extension, and the Chocolatey-template repositories. So the Chocolatey-core.extension is used in a lot of packages, and there's another cut of extensions as well that the community maintain, and they've all been moved to their own repository now. So you can have a look at that and help out there. And as I said, there's that Chocolatey-templates repository. We won't dig into them too much, but if you actually go to the github.com/chocolatey-community, you can see all the repositories where you can get involved there. There are 21 in there, various different things. There's a Chocolatey packages one we've just come from. There's the Chocolatey-extensions one I was talking about, and the Chocolatey-templates one as well. We've also got Chocolatey-package requests, which we'll touch on in a couple of slides, and the various other ones that are there for the community to get involved in. Some of them are more involved than others, and some of them, you'll be able to pick up more experience of maintaining packages than others, but certainly they're all there, and they're all there for the Chocolatey community.
And just to touch on, if anyone feel like they are not being heard or having problems with contributing to the different GitHub repositories and find it too hard, then feel free to reach out to us so we can try to work together with you and try to make it easier.
That is a really good point, actually, Kim. A lot of a lot of our documentation, whether that's actual internal Chocolatey documentation, whether it's external customer documentation, or the GitHub READMEs and the wiki that you mentioned as well, all of that's driven by what people tell us. So, I'm finding this really difficult to try and comprehend. We can update the documentation, or those 7 steps that I showed you in the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages wiki there. For example, if those 7 steps you're going through them, you go, that one doesn't make a lot of sense, please reach out to us and raise a discussion in that repository for that. But we also have Discord, and we'll touch on that later on, but we were doing a lot of our community support now. And a lot of the Chocolatey community are involved in there. So there's a lot of people that will help out with different things. We've got different rooms there for talking about packaging, for talking about just general chat, questions. We've got Box Starter in there as well. So there's a whole load of places that you can go to get help from people. But yeah, that's a good point, Kim. Please reach out to us. It helps us make our wiki in this case, but our documentation a lot better to help you get involved with the community. So the next part we're going to touch on is chocolatey.cake.recipe. And I'm just going to throw this over to Gary because, as I said, Gary is primarily the one responsible for all of this. And yeah, I'm going to stop talking. Gary, it's over to you.
Okay, so what is it? So Chocolatey Cake Recipe. So what we have to acknowledge, first of all, is it is the best name for an open source project that you can ever imagine, right? It's chocolatey, it's cake, and it's a recipe, and you just merge it all together, and you've got Chocolatey Cake Recipe.
Who came up with that name, Gary? Who came up with that name?
Don't know. Might have been me. It might have been me. It might have been me. Might have been me. I don't know, right? But, so what is it? So Chocolatey Cake Recipe is, it's an opinionated set of build scripts. So anyone that knows me from the community knows that I'm both involved in the Chocolatey community and I'm also involved in the cake community. So the cake community is, or the cake system is a build automation system or build orchestration system. So in the context of what we use it for at Chocolatey is we have this thing that we need to compile, we need to package it, we need to publish it, we need to run linting tools on it. We need to do all of these things. And typically we need to do the same thing on multiple different applications. So whether it's Chocolatey CLI, whether it's Chocolatey GUI, whether it's Chocolatey Central Management, normally the build steps or the build orchestration is exactly the same, just with a few project specific tweaks to it. So in a lot of the existing Chocolatey product, we use a system known as Uppercut. So Uppercut is the same under the hood, or in terms of what it's trying to achieve. Uppercut is doing the exact same thing that Cake is doing. It is a build orchestration system. Uppercut uses XML to define those steps, those tasks in terms of what it wants to do and what it's trying to achieve, whereas Cake uses C# DSL. So what we've decided as a team collectively is that we want to move away from Uppercut. We want to move away from that XML definitions to a C# language, because that's what we typically use on most of our products. So what I've been building behind the scenes to start with is this thing called Chocolatey Cake Recipe. So it's a set of opinionated C# build orchestration scripts, and that's now being used internally to build our Chocolatey Central Management systems, to be able to build Chocolatey GUI licensed, Chocolatey GUI, and if you've been paying attention on the Chocolatey Choco repository, I'm in the process of doing a PR to completely replace Uppercut there with the Chocolatey Cake Recipe. So that's what it is. Why does it matter? It's attempting to build, it's attempting to bring consistency and maintainability to all of our build systems across our infrastructure. So rather than walking up to this repository and thinking, oh, how do I build this? It's the same thing over and over and over again, because we're all going to run this Chocolatey Cake Recipe. And what can it be used for? Cake under the hood is a build orchestration system, so it can be used for anything. So at the minute, we're using it for doing the compilation of our code using MS Build. We're running some static analysis tools on the code, so that we've got consistency and maintainability. We use it for doing unit testing and code coverage metrics. We use it for creating Chocolatey packages, creating NuGet packages. We use it for publishing those things to our internal repositories and to the open source repositories. So literally anything that you can automate, you can run with Chocolatey Cake Recipe. So there are some plans. If you look at the repository up on GitHub, it's all on open source. So there's a couple in there. The Cake is a Lie, one of our community members, he's already created an issue or started thinking about how we can start adding in the execution of PS Script Analyzer, so that we can start to audit and maintain all of the PowerShell scripts that are used across all of the repositories that we have. The main driving force behind all of this is that we find that we need PS Script Analyzer to analyze the scripts in the Chocolatey Choco repository. We'll add it to the recipe, and then all of a sudden we've got that same PS script analyzer being available on all of our repositories. So we don't have to duplicate code. We write it once within the recipe, and then we use it across all of the different repositories, both in our external open source repositories, as well as the private ones that we have internally as well. So that's what it is. Again, most amazingly named product you've ever seen. I'll just repeat that again. Chocolatey cake recipe, but it has been pointed out that for whatever reason, the majority of the open source projects that I run on have cake or have food related connotations. I don't know how that's happened. I don't seek out projects that are based on food, but it does seem that that's how things work. But yeah, that's what it is. So if there's any questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, we can jump on to the next bit.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, I don't know how to follow that. So yeah, as Gary said, that it's a bit of a leap forward for a lot of our builds. We've got Chocolatey Choco's the first, I think it's the first really big one that we're migrating. Not the first big one that uses cake, but the first big one we're migrating over cake. Is there been any challenges, Gary, in doing that from uppercut to cake?
So you're right. So the first couple of projects that we used this recipe on, we were coming in, there wasn't a build orchestration system in place. So we added in cake.recipe or chocolate.cake.recipe. But what we're finding now is that in bringing the recipe to something like Chocolatey Choco, there's those things that we didn't think about, or those things that we need to do in addition to Chocolatey Choco. So for example, Chocolatey Choco build uses a system called IL merge. So that's intermediate language merge. It's a tool that basically takes compiled code assemblies and merges them all into one big assembly. So that's what we do. That's why you get a final choco.exe that you run when you're running Chocolatey. In order to make that happen, we had to add in a new task into the build orchestration system to do that IL merging, because we weren't doing it previously. The reason that we weren't doing it previously is because on our internal systems, we use a different technology for doing that IL merging. We don't use the tool called IL merge. But because we're in the open source land, we had to add that in. So that's something that it's not a problem, because the whole point in this system is that we can add in those additional tasks and then run them when they're needed. So that task got added into the base recipe, and it just won't be run on the other internal projects that are already using the recipe, because it doesn't need to run on those systems. So those are the kind of things we're running into at the minute. There's also been a few, again, if you're following the repository and the amount of releases that I've been putting out recently, we've gone from, before I started this process, we were at 0.4.0, I think, of the Chocolatey cake recipe. Now we're up at 0.8.0 with a few bug fix releases in between there. Basically, what's been happening is I've been iterating on this the last week and a half, maybe, whilst doing other things and just finding those little edge cases, little bugs. So yeah, feel free to look at the repository and look at the issues that are being raised, because it's been a wild ride. But like I say, it's all for the good. Once we've figured out all of these things, we've got them in the recipe, we've got all of that ingrained knowledge within the recipe, so that then when we come to do the next one, or the next project where we're replacing uppercut again, hopefully it will be we just slot it in and it starts working. That's the intention anyway. But if you do want to get involved, it is open source, it is available. So if there's anything that you think we need to be doing on repositories, for example, PS script analyzer, other things that I want to add into the recipe are things like spell checking, because someone opened up a PR recently on Chocolatey Choco, and there were literally hundreds of spelling mistakes, which is it's shameful, let's put it that way. So adding in something like a spell check into the recipe, so that it runs across all of the files and does that as part of the build and fails the build if there's a spelling mistake, that's the kind of things that I'm looking at adding in, as well as additional static analysis tools to ensure that we've got consistent maintainable code bases across all of our different assets.
Okay, thank you, Gary, for that. If we've got any questions on that, we can pick them up. I'm just having a quick look at Twitch there. Nothing. Someone's asked, when is Chocolatey cake recipe going to 1.0, Gary? I think with the number of releases that you're doing, that'll be about 20 minutes, thereabouts.
I think the idea would be once I get through this one, it's maybe a good kind of line to draw the line in the sand. But most likely what's going to happen is that all of the core Chocolatey products will be running under the context of Chocolatey Cake Recipe. And once they're all there and being built using that system, then at that point, I think we'll draw a line in the sand so that we can then start to make breaking changes. Because there are some breaking changes that I want to make. So for example, Chocolatey Cake Recipe is still using an older version of Cake. And Matthias from the Cake team has already been on at me that I need to not use the older version of Cake. And what we should be using is the newer .NET Global tool version of Cake rather than what I refer to as the full-fat .NET Framework version of Cake. But there are reasons that it's like that. But once we get to a 1.0 release, then I can start breaking stuff. I seem to like getting to that 1.0 releases of things to then start breaking stuff. So I'm going to continue that trend. And that's what I'm going to do.
Awesome. Okay, thanks for that, Gary. So hopefully that covers everything you always wanted to ask about chocolatey.cake.recipe. I'm saying that, but it's quite new and so a lot of people won't have heard of it. But hopefully that answers all of those questions that you wanted to ask. But again, as Kim said earlier on about the Chocolatey Community, Chocolatey Packages, GitHub repository. I know that's a mouthful, but I'm going to say it because that's what it is. And I made a mistake earlier and didn't add the GitHub bit in. But reach out to us, talk to us, tell us if you've got any questions about that. If you've got any improvements that Gary said about PS Script Analyzer there. It wants to add in the spell checking, but people can help with that. So please do reach out if you've got any further questions about it. So this is the part I'm going to talk about, and then I'm going to kind of turn over to Kim and Gary to, actually, they're the two people who, out of the whole team, that are probably the worst to talk about the Chocolatey Community Days, because both of them were off when we did the Community Day. So it's going to just be, this one's going to be on me. So what is the Chocolatey Community Day? So we had some discussions with some colleagues internally. We had some discussions with some people we know in wider communities about kind of community days that they were involved in. And we thought it was a good idea for us to get involved in a community day. But what is a community day? Well, first of all, the way we interpreted it and what we did was we looked at just open source issues and discussions for across our community Chocolatey community repositories. So we put together a list of all those community repositories that we would be able to get involved in. And probably the best thing is some of the team just said they'd work on a couple over here. So we kind of picked what we wanted to work on in terms of repositories. And then we got in there and we worked on some issues. We looked at some of the pull requests to get them done. And I, for example, worked in the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages GitHub repository. I worked on a number of issues that came in there and put in a number of PRs to fix some packages. And I worked on some of the docs. And my intention was to get to C Choco as well, and I didn't manage to get there. But that was the plan for us to do it. So when we do day-to-day work, we're working on both open source and commercial products. As most of you are aware, Chocolatey has commercial versions of Chocolatey itself. We've also got CCM, Chocolatey Central Management, as well in there. We've got open source products that we also, so Chocolatey CLI is fundamentally an open source product where we've got the commercial version that kind of sits on top of that. But when we're working on day-to-day things, we've got many, many things to cover. I really wish I'd have brought some stats with me. We talked about it internally, about the number of repositories that Chocolatey as a whole and the engineering team in particular, which is what I manage, actually maintain. And there's a huge number of those repositories. And when I'm talking about repositories, then I'm talking about GitHub repositories. We also have some internal repositories as well that you don't see, the private repositories for our internal code that we maintain as well. So there's a huge number of source control repositories, let's call them, that we maintain. And on a day-to-day basis, we're not always working in Chocolatey CLI. That's the big product, it's the one everybody knows about, but there's lots of others, so we're not always in there. So what we want to do with the community day is really just take a full day for the team and look at community, open source, issues and discussions, and sort of, as I said, fix issues, respond to issues, respond to discussions, get PRs in there, and just work on that. And it's good for us as well, as it lets us touch back with the community. It lets us be involved for a whole day, be involved with the community again, which, as I said at the beginning, you know, Kim and Gary came from the community, I came from the community, and other Chocolatey team members came from the community as well. So it is important to us. And sometimes some of the GitHub or source control repositories don't get as much love as we'd like to give them, but because we're, you know, managing a lot and juggling a lot of source control repositories and a lot of products, that sometimes doesn't happen. So it was about focusing on that for that whole day. And we plan to do more community days. We've not established a cadence when we're going to be doing it. So if I tell you one thing, it'll probably change the next time we do it. So we're going to do it regularly throughout the year. And I think we'll get to a point where we're going to change it and do it maybe more regularly and less. And we'll get to a point where it's a nice balance and we're getting involved with the community. We're getting the community work done. The community's happy with what's happening. And we're also getting internal work done as well. So everybody's kind of happy and get that balance. And that's a challenge for me to manage the team to do that. And also for, you know, Rob as a company as a whole is to manage all of that and make sure we're serving everybody as best we can. Now I've got their plans for the future. We've talked about doing something over Hacktoberfest. If you don't know what Hacktoberfest is, it's a community-sponsored, community-run event by DigitalOcean. And what it's really about is to try and get 5 pull requests in. And you get the option, once you do that, 5 pull requests into an open source repository, such as Chocolatey Choco or any of the other ones we kind of looked at earlier. And you'll then, at the end of that, if they've been verified, you'll get the option of a t-shirt or to plant a tree is a new thing they've actually done. They did that last year, I think, for the first time. Maybe they did it the year before, but it definitely was there last year. So that's the kind of, you know, what it's happening with that. But the actual point of it is to get people involved in open source, to give you an incentive. Now, as IT people, we love t-shirts and stickers. So if you're going to offer us a t-shirt, whatever you need me to do, that's fine. If I need to do 5 PRs to get a t-shirt, I'm quite happy. So we do that. But we want to do something round about that. We talked about this in previous years. Some of the team put on other Hacktoberfest events, you know, separate. I do one every year as well. Gary spoke at that in the past. And there'll be other team members that get involved with that. But Chocolatey's talked about doing their own one. We haven't really done much about it. So we want to do something round about the Hacktoberfest. And we're talking about maybe incorporating some community days into that as well. So it's plans, it's watch this space and, you know, see what happens. But we're going to do something. What that morphs into, as I said, we'll talk about that closer to the event because it's in October. We're only in May just now. I had to look at the calendar and remind myself what month we're actually in. We're in May just now, so we're 5 months away before, you know, that's going to kick off. But as I said, watch this space. And as you know, as I said earlier on, I'd normally then turn over to Gary and Kim, but they weren't there for the community day. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to speak about something. We've got about 10, 11 minutes left on the stream. I don't know if you want to speak about anything that you've been involved with to do with Hacktoberfest. I said, Gary, you've spoke, I think, at a number of years at the events that myself and Craig Porteous put on in Scotland every year. So I don't know whether you want to speak about any of that and anything that you've done. Gary, do you want to go first? Then I'll go to Kim.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like you, I've been involved in Hacktoberfest in one way or another for, I think, 7 odd years now. I think I've got 7 of the t-shirts. So for me, it's a great opportunity to get involved in potentially other projects that you've not been interested in. So for me, as an open source contributor, I was able to contribute into things like Chef as part of Hacktoberfest this year. It's something I don't typically do because it's Ruby and I don't normally do Ruby, but it's an opportunity to get involved in maybe a language that you don't do on a day-to-day basis. And from our perspective, it's a great opportunity to get people who are interested in contributing into Chocolatey to do that. Now, one of the things that's difficult for people who are interested in Hacktoberfest is, well, how do they get started? How can they make a contribution that may be more than just a documentation change? Now, nothing wrong with just a documentation change. We love documentation changes, but if there is something specific that could be a Hacktoberfest contribution, we as maintainers of that project need to get better at here's a good entry-level issue that someone could pick up. We need to document it. We need to say, this is maybe how I would do it, and give them guidance in terms of how to do it. And by showing someone how to do it once, the idea then is that they'll be able to contribute on their own across the different Chocolatey code bases going forward. So there's things that we need to do to get better at, and then hopefully see those contributions coming in. We also need to get better at accepting some of the contributions, but that's because we're sitting at something silly like, I think the Cake is a Lie has got something like 19 open PRs at the minute in the Chocolatey Chocolate repository. We need to get better at accepting those and getting them out as a shipped release. But that's part of the underlying, this is what the community days are for, and why we're getting time from the company to go back to open source, to review those PRs, to get them merged in, and ultimately to ship them. So no, I'm excited to see how this expands, and how we can start to accept more of those community-driven efforts for Chocolatey, and yeah, see where it goes. Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Kim, have you been involved in Hacktoberfest? What have you been doing over the years?
Well, I think I started becoming involved in Hacktoberfest 4 years ago or something, where then I started looking more on project like Cake and Git version and such, try to open pull requests for those to help out. Well, to be honest, to get a t-shirt. But yeah, nothing major that I've been involved in.
You're not normally involved with either of those projects, though, so that's something that, as Gary mentioned, it gets you involved in things that you traditionally wouldn't. Okay, you're not jumping into Ruby, you're not going that far as Gary's went, but you're getting involved in projects that traditionally you wouldn't be involved in, and it's opening your experience up working with those projects.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. So, and that's the spirit of Hacktoberfest. And I think just something that Gary had mentioned as well is it's important to point out, while I kind of thought it was fairly obvious that Chocolatey has given us the time to actually work on the open source issues and discussions in all the different projects. That's what the same. So not only are we talking here today, Kim and I and Gary are all talking about how the community is dear to hearts, and as I've said, some of the other members of the Chocolatey team have come for the community, so it'll be important to them as well. But it's important to Chocolatey because Chocolatey's given us this time to go and work on community things. At that time, we're not spending on internal projects. We're not spending on commercial projects. We're not spending on admin or, the other things that we all do in a day-to-day, when we work. And we're spending it purely on the community, the open source part of it, and trying to bring people in, trying to encourage people to contribute and expanding that community as well, because it's important to all of us, and that importance comes from the top down in Chocolatey. Rob will talk about how important it is. I've had many discussions with Rob about how important it is for us, the team to be involved in the community, and how Chocolatey to give us that time, and that's where Chocolatey was born, was from the community, and we're really grateful to the community for that. So it's top down with Chocolatey, it comes from the top, and all of us are involved in that. So we're about 5-6 minutes away from time, and the last part, this is the last slide, and it's really just talking about goals for the future. What we see is where the community could possibly go, where the numbers of people involved in the community go, where people working in the community, on example, the Chocolatey packages, GitHub repository that we talked about. So where all of this can go, and I'm really just going to talk through the bullet points here, and then I'm just going to throw it open to Gary and Kim just to jump in. As I said, we've got 5 minutes left, so we've got a bit of time there to talk about it, and then we'll jump to any questions that we actually come up in the Twitch stream, and then we'll call it a day. So how can people get involved? How can you, as a community member or an aspiring community member, have your voice heard? Well, we've actually got a number of different social media interaction points, if we want to call it that. So we've got Discord, we've recently set up a new Discord server that's been running since October, November last year. And we've got a community maintainers room, and that's for package maintainers. So you can come in as a package maintainer and ask questions there specifically about, package maintenance. So if you are new to creating packages, for example, you might want to come in there and say, I'm a new maintainer. I've got these things I want to talk about. There's also a packaging room, which I mentioned earlier on, and that's specifically about packaging. That could be because you're new to packaging. It could be because you're an organization that has a commercial version of Chocolatey and you want to understand how the packaging aspect works from that. And all of that kind of stuff you can talk about in there. And there's a whole host of other rooms as well. As I mentioned earlier, you've got chat, you've got questions, you've got box starter rooms. We've got a couple of voice channels in there that Gary was hanging out in. I think it was at Monday night, Gary, you were on there. It's part of your Twitch stream. That's something we should talk about at the end as well. So, there's a whole host of places you can hang out, get information, get help from the community, and the Chocolatey team's in there as well. We've got Reddit as well that a couple of the team actually kind of moderate. So you've got moderators in Reddit, but we've got an official subreddit in Reddit called Chocolatey, surprisingly enough. So you can go on there, you can ask questions. We've got Twitter. You've probably seen our Twitter announcements for this Twitch stream. Twitter's very, very popular. You can interact with us on there as well. We've got GitHub issues and discussions as well. Not so much social media, I suppose you wouldn't class it as, but we've talked about that for the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages repository, where there's discussions, there's issues, there's a pull request aspect as well. But all of our repositories have obviously the issues and pull requests, because that's part of it. But I think all of them have discussions now as well, Gary, or all of the major ones certainly have discussions. Is that right, Gary, Kim?
Yeah,
that's right.
I think so.
Yeah. What we have done as well is we have promoted discussions to the Chocolatey organization. So that's kind of the entry point for creating a single discussion, and that would go down to, I think, our home repository. But if you do have a specific question on Chocolatey Choco or Chocolatey GUI, then discussions are enabled on a specific repository. But if you just got a general question, then go to the GitHub organization for Chocolatey, and discussions are pinned there as well. Yeah.
So the discussions I was going to say recently, it was quite some time ago, but it's the most kind of recent big change we've done round about issues, pull requests, discussions, all that kind of stuff. So that's the kind of newest part of that. What we want to do with these particular live streams as well is we want to have regular community calls. Now, we've talked about some cadences for that when we really want to do them. What I'm reluctant to do is say, hey, this is what we're going to do, because at the moment it's very much in the planning stage, but we want to look at doing them potentially monthly. Okay, let's just say that's very much penciled in. But we want to kind of look at doing that, and we want to also look at starting them in June. Again, it's a watch this space thing, very much penciled in. There's a lot of work to do in the background to do some of the stuff we want to do, including the bit just below that, which is bringing the community members in from Discord to ask questions on the stream. So there's some technical I was going to say limitations. They're not technical hoops. That's the word I have to look for. Technical hoops to jump through to get that to happen. And we want to make sure as well that, it's robust enough that we can use it and it not fall apart when we're actually on the stream. So there's some testing there and make sure that it all works. And Gary's going to be involved in some of that, and I'm going to look at helping him out with that as well. So that's where we're kind of looking at for ways that you can get involved. And we want to either encourage, or we do want to encourage you to use all of those avenues, or whichever ones you're most comfortable with or is easiest with for you, but also tell us about other avenues that we could use. Now, bear in mind that we have to moderate and monitor all of that. So if we add another one in, it's a lot of work for the team. So we'd look to primarily maybe, let's say, want to talk about a certain aspect of Chocolatey, then we would probably look to add that into Discord rather than adding a whole new social media channel, for example, because as I said, that's something we need to manage and maintain, and it is a lot of work. It might seem that it's not a lot of work, but it is a lot of work underneath to make sure all of that works and works smoothly, and there's a good experience for that. And as I said, the community calls as well that we want to get involved in, and we're really looking for your input into what you would like to see for a community call. Do we do an ask us anything type thing and then kind of AMA, or do we do just like this? Do we do a chat, maybe throw some slides up, here's things I want to talk about and open it up? Do we want to focus on a particular topic? Do we want to, for example, let's say we focus on the Chocolatey Community Chocolatey Packages GitHub repository. Let's talk about all of that. Here's the 5 things that people want to know, and we just go through a call and we talk all about that. Do we go through the chocolate cake recipe? All sorts. We want to get your feedback and ideas, and the best place for that, to be fair, is actually in Discord. So our Discord, someone could throw it into chat. Actually, I didn't put it on the slide here. I'm bad, but it's ch0.co/community. Someone could throw it into the chat. I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, guys, Gary, Kim, what do you think about all of the things that we've talked about today, and in particular this last slide here, what we're talking about for the future?
So for me personally, I mean, I'm quite excited about opening up the community coffee breaks that we're talking about. So about 2 or 3 months ago, Paul and I experimented with that within Discord. We created an event. We made it a staged event. Him and I just jumped in, expecting just for us to kind of play with it. It ended up there was 2 or 3 community members just jumped in and started asking us questions. So it was great from that perspective because there was an interaction with the community members, not what we expected because we weren't expecting anyone to get involved, but they did, which was great. But the thing that I like about it is that these kind of dialogues that we're having here are great between the team. We're talking, we're trying to field questions from the chat as they come in. But if someone's got maybe a more involved question, then they can jump onto voice if they want to, ask us a question directly and we can answer it. Now, it might turn out that nobody wants to turn up and nobody wants to ask a question, and that's fine as well. But I think using the technologies that we have available to us is great. I personally use that kind of technology on Monday night, as Paul said. So I normally do a stream on Twitch, which is me basically sitting on my computer for a dedicated time slot when I don't have kids or a wife or a dog to look after. And I get 2 hours of doing stuff on a stream, and it's great. On this day, I did have a dog to look after. So I didn't want to necessarily be on a stream trying to show people things when there's a dog barking and stuff. So I thought I'll just jump on the Discord voice channel and hang out while I was doing stuff. It turns out that Corey and Joel and a couple of community members joined in. We were having a bit of dialogue about various things. The Cake is a Lie jumped on because he was interested in some of the things that I was doing with Chocolatey Cake Recipe. So for me, it's a great way to get involved with people, and I would like to see that getting developed further. So what I did is I pinged in the Discord to say that I was going to hang out in the voice channel, and a few people joined in, so it was great. So I'll probably do more of that going forward. You just have to be, you might have a dog barking in the background. That's the only thing when that's happening. So you just have to, Paul can testify to the fact that Bailey's got quite a loud bark. So when on Zoom calls, Bailey barking causes problems, but that's the risk you run, basically. So there we go. But no, I'll say I'm looking forward to all of that. So yeah, I'm excited to get involved with more of it.
Kim, do you get anything to talk about on there?
I just want the same with Gary. I think looking forward to having more of that events on Discord or bringing people in from Discord to have them asking questions and such. I think that's a nice idea that we can get started on soon, hopefully. So,
yeah, it's something, as I kind of said, something we've talked about wanting to do. And I think if we put a flag in the sand and say, let's do it on X date, then it focuses our mind to actually get that done. Again, just, I'm repeating myself, but it's important to emphasize that the community is important, and we want to make sure that we can interact with the community as much as possible. It's very easy for us to sit here and behind the products and work away and produce chocolate CLI and CCM and all the other things that you see. But we came from the community. The community is important to us. The community is where we started, and we want to make sure that community continues to grow and continues to be encouraged and nurtured. And something we haven't actually mentioned, I think we mentioned the word once, is our community moderators. They're an incredibly important part of Chocolatey and the Chocolatey Community Repository. I know we've went over slightly time, but I just wanted touch on, what the community moderators do. The Chocolatey Community Repository, when you submit a package, actually goes through, certain checks and balances there. We've got package validator, package verifier, package scanner. I won't talk about them just now, but it also hits a human being, and that human being has to go through your code and make sure it's sensible, make sure it's not malicious. They have to get through the other parts of the package you've got as well. It's a human being that's got to sit there and go through all of that. And the vast majority of them are actually volunteers, and they will go through that on their own spare time to help the Chocolatey community. And we don't talk about them enough, I feel. And I think it's really important. I don't want to mention any particular names because I will leave somebody out, because there are quite a lot of them. But there's a small core team that are really involved and heavily moderating packages when they can in their spare time. So Chocolatey, I was going to say Chocolatey wants to say thank you. I want to say thank you, and I think Chocolatey is really grateful to those community moderators. And I know, Gary, you moderate packages, I moderate packages when I can. Kim does it as well, and a few of the other Chocolatey team members do too. But that's an incredibly important part of the community as well, and another part of the community that we want to nurture. So any last thoughts, Gary, Kim, before we finish the stream today?
Not for me, I don't think so. No.
No,
Okay.
I don't have anything.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, well, thank you very much, Gary, Kim, for joining us today. Thank you very much to you for watching today. Really enjoyed talking about the community, and as I said, it's something we want to do in the future. It would be really great if you could like the videos, follow us on Twitch, YouTube, all the thumbs up and all the follows and the subscription buttons. That's all fantastic. It gets our videos higher in those fantastic algorithms and gets it to the wider community so that we can bring more people in to Chocolatey. So we will see you again in June. I was going to say July there, but that's not the next month, Paul. The next month is June. We will see you again in June, and it's the first Thursday of the month we will see you in, and we will have another topic to discuss. And we might have some announcements round about, some of the community stuff that we've talked about today. So thank you very much, and we'll catch you on the next stream. Bye-bye.